Welcome back to Required Reading. I'm Russ, and today we're continuing our read of the novelization of Gremlins, written by George Gipe. This is Chapter 3. It was always so difficult getting something truly different and exciting for his family, Rand Peltzer mused, and every Christmas it got worse. Rather than grow despondent, however, he accepted selecting the proper gift as a challenge, which was the way he looked at his life in general. Rand considered himself a survivor, a grown-up boy from the poorest section of town who, without benefit of college or any specialized training, somehow had managed to marry the finest woman in Kingston Falls and support a family reasonably well. True, he had to scramble, but wasn't that part of life's fun? People laughed at him when his inventions failed to perform as they should, but didn't that make it even more enjoyable when they did work? Now, although bothered by his inability to find the ultimate present for Billy, he was happy. He loved Christmas, and everything it stood for. The bringing together spirit, the stepped-up economy, a feeling of mellowness, and especially the opportunity to be nice to people, without their looking at you oddly. How he arrived in Chinatown, he was not exactly sure. He had no recollection of ordering a cabbie to take me to Chinatown, or even of deciding that he should take himself there. Probably, as he meandered through shop and mall and stall in search of the elusive unique present, he had arrived in Chinatown almost by osmosis. He had never shopped here before, although he had visited as a tourist. But why not? Why shouldn't this be the place where he found it? Whatever it was. With a slightly puzzled expression on his round face, Rand resembled any other middle-aged shopper, a genial-faced man who might once have been quite handsome. He still possessed an attractively thick head of ruffled gray hair and penetrating green eyes. Below the neck he had aged less gracefully, the burly chest yielding to a thick waist that had stopped just short of being a beer belly, although some of his less diplomatic friends used that term occasionally. One might have imagined him as a professional football player, say a lineman, who retired in 1965 and had been losing the Battle of the Bulge grudgingly. Dressed in a tweed jacket, corduroy pants, and a gray pullover sweater, he was obviously a man who put comfort over style. "There's gotta be something here," he muttered. He surveyed the articles on the counter of the Chinese curio shop, a glittering array of souvenir-type items. There were ashtrays, tie pens, pen and pencil sets, even Chinatown toilet paper. Above him tinkled mobiles, from which dangled acrobats, gargoyles, unidentified artistic shapes. On the walls were clocks and dartboards, posters and plaques, paintings and etchings, but nothing that appealed to him. Nothing he knew that would bring that light into Billy's eyes he loved so much. "Hello, gentlemen." With the typical, to Rand Peltzer, oriental fervidness, a tallow-faced Chinese woman had suddenly appeared from beneath the counter by the simple process of standing up. Rand started, nearly dropping the brass ashtray he had picked up. "Yes," he said, "I'd like something for my son. Something different." The woman pointed to a stereo, then to a watch when Rand shook his head. "He like mechanical things?" the woman asked. "No, he's an artist, a cartoonist. Maybe you got some sort of gizmo an artist could use?" "Gizmo?" "Yeah," Rand replied with a sudden inspiration. "Maybe something like a combination easel and brush holder, or... His eyes drifted towards the ceiling as he began to feel his inspirational juices flowing. "Or maybe an easel you can fold up and carry in your pocket. You know, for the artist who travels a lot." "Gizmo," the woman repeated, holding a rechargeable battery for Rand to see. He shook his head. Starting for the door, he continued to ponder the problems of constructing a portable easel. "1 minute," the woman called out. Rand hesitated, as she darted from behind the counter through a small door leading to the back room. No sooner was she gone than Rand became aware of another presence.
Mister, want something different?
Asked a new voice. It belonged to a very thin Chinese boy. He had long legs, which made him appear taller and no doubt several years older than he really was, which Rand guessed to be about 9. He was dressed in a faded Los Angeles Dodgers jacket, a wrinkled Springsteen t-shirt, washed-out torn Levi's, and high-top sneakers. An outfit, Rand observed inwardly, that made him look like a walking advertisement for unclaimed freight auctions. Still, there was something about him Rand liked and trusted. "That's right," he replied, his glance alternating between the huge dark eyes of the kid and the doorway through which the woman had departed.
Something unusual. Something nobody else has.
Then realizing that such a description only fit a very few items, such as the Hope Diamond, he amended himself. "I mean, it doesn't have to be expensive or the only thing of its kind, but I'd like it to be, well, different, you know." The youngster nodded.
Follow me, please,
he said. "Can't you just tell me what it is?"
No, sir. It defies description.
Oh, Rand thought. So it defies description, does it? If the kid had picked up that phrase at such a tender age, he must be a truly precocious con artist. Perhaps he was the bait for a gang of muggers or kidnappers. Good sense warned Rand to give up his quest as soon as possible. On the other hand, when had he ever listened to his own good sense? The old woman reappeared, dragging a huge inflatable and now quite inflated red dragon, which would have filled all but the largest bathtubs.
Gizmo,
she asked. No, Rand smiled, backing towards the exit. But thanks anyway. A moment later, he was on the street, the Chinese youngster at his elbow.
Trinkets, the boy said disparagingly. You want something different, and she offers you trinkets.
As a salesman, Rand had learned long ago never to knock the other fellow's product. In time, this young man would learn the same lesson, he supposed, and now was an appropriate moment to give him a subtle bit of wisdom. "That was a very nice dragon," he said. "A lot of people might enjoy that. It wasn't for me."
"A trinket," the kid repeated. "A big trinket. Follow me, and you'll see something really different."
Rand did so, although he cautioned himself to be warier than usual. The avenue was bustling with activity, but he scanned the passing faces with careful scrutiny to catch the nod or signal directed by or at the youngster. As they moved down the length of the block, he saw nothing unusual. Tradespeople passed quickly, each involved in his or her own thoughts. A couple of nuns, giggling nervously, rode by in a rickshaw. Several young men who looked like college students carried on a brief conversation with a young Oriental woman, trying desperately to match her world-weariness with a coolness of their own. Soon they were standing next to a stairway leading to a cellar.
"Here,"
the youngster said. "No wonder you have to drag people in off the street," Rand muttered, looking around carefully. The kid opened the door at the bottom of the stairwell, indicated that Rand should follow. Taking a deep breath, Rand did so. Inside was no shop of horrors, but neither was it a shop brimming with exciting items. The main source of the illumination seemed to be hundreds of candles, which burned singeingly or in groups from every flat surface in the cluttered room. Above dangled the usual Oriental mobiles, the metal ones creating their jangling music as the tiny slivers touched one another. Rand examined a truly beautiful chess set, with huge men carved to resemble Japanese warriors and peasants. For a moment he thought Billy would appreciate the artistry of the set, perhaps even be able to use it as a model for some of his cartoon figures. Then he shrugged. The chess set simply did not say, "Buy me." Turning to locate the youngster, he saw an old Chinese gentleman instead. He was seated on a sort of platform, puffing gently on a long pipe, Long gray whiskers adorned the lower portion of his face, and on his head was a black skull cap. Dressed in a flowing brown tunic, he seemed almost priestly, seated up high. Ran entertained the thought for only a moment, however. The man, for all his formality and air of ethereal detachment, was simply another salesman like himself. Only their environments differed. This man sat in his shop all day while Ran patrolled the world outside. Having arrived at that conclusion, it was logical that Ran take the next step. Moving closer to the man, he opened his briefcase and pulled out a complex-looking object approximately a foot long. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "I followed a young man in here who told me there might be something truly different for me to see." The Chinese gentleman nodded slowly. "My grandson," he said in a surprisingly deep and resonant voice. The expression accompanying the two-word reply was a mixture of fondness and skepticism, confirming Rand's earlier notion that the kid was a precocious con artist. Never one to be discouraged, Rand had already decided to make his pitch. Looking around at the curio shop, which was cluttered with the usual array of frightening oriental masks, ancient witchcraft tokens, rotting skulls, and dusty books on the occult, he made a sort of sweeping gesture. "Now, sir, if I may say something," he began, "this is a very nice shop. But what you could use, in addition to this wonderful inventory you already have, are some new and modern items, like this." He held up the object he had taken from his briefcase. A formless thing that resembled a tuning fork, to which clung a variety of smaller contrivances, gadgets, and appendages. "Now let's say you get on a train or a bus for an important business appointment," Rand began. "No sooner are you seated than you realize you forgot to brush your teeth, and your mouth feels like the government's been using it to test deadly chemicals. Normally, you'd have cause for alarm, but not if you've got one of these. The Bathroom Buddy. It's my own invention. Just another product from the inventing laboratory of Rand Peltzer, the man who makes the impossible possible and the illogical logical." Ignoring the Chinese gentleman's total lack of interest, Rand slid one arm from the other side of the object, producing a sort of crude toothbrush. He then pushed a button, which in turn caused a spray of watery white paste to spurt out so hard it hit the nearby wall, then dribbled slowly onto the floor. "No problem," Rand said, pushing the off switch. The device continued to spew off-white gunk down the length of the object and into the palm of Rand's hand, burbling thickly as it did so. "No problem," Rand repeated. "It cleans up easily. And when it works, it's just one of the 10 highly useful parts of this Bathroom Buddy. Of course, I'm prejudiced, but I think you could use a few modern gadgets like this in your shop. How about if I put you down for a dozen? Believe me, even a place like this, which isn't exactly Sears Roebuck, they'll be gone in a week." As if to punctuate Rand's climactic promise, the Bathroom Buddy emitted a single loud noise, something between a belch and an explosion of wet cement, sending forth a thick geyser of gluey glop, which eventually came to rest on the inventor's left lapel. "It still has a few bugs in it," Rand said weakly. The Chinese man broke then, like Mount Rushmore suddenly coming to life. The lips parted, revealing a set of impressively huge teeth, and gales of laughter began to shake him. First, he undulated sideways, then up and down. A trembling finger emerged from beneath the tunic, and finally horned in on Ran, an accusing crook that bounced lightly as the old man shook with laughter. "Thomas Edison," he giggled. "Thomas Edison." Embarrassed but inured to the experience by past mishaps, Rand chuckled good-naturedly, especially when he noticed that the young shill had witnessed the demonstration and was also laughing. For a moment Rand merely faked his own laugh, waiting patiently for the moment of derision to end. As he did so, however, he became aware of a third voice in the choir of laughter. It was higher than those of the old man and boy. Rather unearthly, a cross between the gurgle of an infant and a shriek of a parrot. "Wait," he called out. "What's that?" It took a moment for the old man and the boy to contain themselves. When they did so, their sudden silence isolated the alien voice, emphasizing its strange intonation as it continued to giggle in the background. "I've never heard anything like that," Rand muttered, looking from one Oriental to the other. They responded to his implied question with evasive expressions. The old man seemed to have developed a sudden fascination with a piece of paper on his desk. The boy, less subtle, merely turned away. Meanwhile, the bizarre laughter continued to echo from a small room just behind them. "Boy, that must be something," Rand said to no one in particular, moving towards the doorway of the room. As he reached the entrance, he turned to look at the youngster. "Is that it?" he asked. "Is that the reason why you brought me here? Is that the different thing?" The boy looked at the floor, intimidated by the sharp glance from his grandfather. "Yeah, I guess it must be," Rand replied to his own question. "I'd sure like to see who or what owns that laugh." Hesitating at the doorway, he paused as a sense of propriety gripped him. The back room, after all, was private, and regardless of his curiosity, he felt it necessary to have their permission to look there. In response, the old Chinese gentleman shrugged. "Thanks," Rand said. Pushing his way through a set of beaded curtains, he entered the inner sanctum, waiting a moment for his eyes to adjust to the darkness. Finally, he was able to make out a table on which several dozen shoeboxes, each containing bits of assorted trinkets, were piled. Near them was a small box, about a foot square, draped with a piece of burlap. From behind the burlap came soft sounds, no longer the high-pitched, gleeful giggle of the minute previous, but something unearthly nonetheless. Moving to the edge of the table, he reached forward, now aware that the two Orientals had followed him and were standing at the doorway, their figures casting elongated shadows into the room. Gently, almost reverently, Rand lifted the burlap curtain. "Wow," he said softly. He had never seen a creature like it before. "What in the world is that?" Rand asked. "Mogwai," the old Chinese man replied. What?" "It's what he calls himself. It took me a while to find out. I have no idea what it means." "Mogwai," Rand repeated. "Sounds like something from another planet. Too hard to remember and pronounce. As far as I'm concerned, you're just plain Gizmo." The creature looked balefully at Rand, a low sound emanating from its closed mouth. "What's he doing?" Rand asked. "Singing," the Chinese youngster replied. "He only does that for people he likes." Rand smiled. "What's he eat?" he asked. The old man returned the smile. "Anything." "What do you mean, anything?" "Anything that can be chewed. Yesterday he ate a rubber washer. He's also eaten cardboard and packing chips. But I think he most enjoys the things we like." "Candy?" Rand asked, suddenly remembering that he had a Milky Way bar in his jacket pocket. "Oh, definitely," the Chinese man replied. Rand found the bar and unwrapped it, pushing it gently into the cage. He watched intently as the creature sniffed it, then devoured the soft mixture of chocolate and caramel in 3 or 4 large bites. Delighted, Rand found himself applauding, swallowing heavily. The Mogwai seemed to return a glance that said, "Thank you." "How much you want for it?" Rand asked. "Mogwai is not for sale," the old man replied. "Ha, come on," Rand persisted. "My son'd love it, and we'd give it a good home." "I am sorry." "Listen, I gotta have it. This is what your grandson brought me to see, isn't it?" "No.
I send him out to interest customers in other items of my shop, but not Mogwai.
But that's the only thing you have in here that's different. The rest is just curio stuff. The standard souvenirs and trinkets, the young man interjected. And not exactly, Rand added, seeing a pained look in the old man's eyes. You got a nice place. The chess set out there is wonderful. But my boy doesn't play chess, though. This here gizmo is perfect. I'll give you $100.
Thank you. No.
Rand removed his wallet, hoping that the sight of the money itself would change the man's mind, or at least make him realize how serious he was. Fingering a couple of 50s, Rand added another, then another. The old man continued to shake his head. 250, Rand said, spreading the bills across the palm of his hand like a poker player displaying a royal flush. Take it, please. The old man withdrew his eyes from the money. Revulsion and desire blended in his features. A dieter confronted with a juicy meal that he wants and does not want. 260, Rand persisted. It's all I got. Take it, Grandpa, the young man urged.
No.
We need the money, the rent.
No, the old man repeated. Mogwai is not like other animal. He is very special creature. With Mogwai comes much responsibility.
Hey, I'm a responsible person, Rand interjected. I go to church every Sunday. Well, a lot of Sundays. I pay my taxes. I take the garbage out. What's wrong with me?
It's not you. It is humanity. I'm sorry, but I cannot sell Mogwai at any price.
With that, the old man turned and left the room. Rand sighed, slowly pushed the money back into his wallet, noting that the young man continued to eye the bills wistfully. You can't reason with him? He asked. The young man took a deep breath, walked slowly to the doorway, and looked out at his grandfather, who was now seated near the front of the door, staring stoically at the passerby. Returning to Rand, he looked at him in the manner of an employer assessing someone applying for a job. Listen, mister, he said, the old man's right. This is a very special creature. The person who has him has to be extra careful, do some strange-sounding things. Like what? Well, there are rules, you see. You gotta keep him out of light. That's why it's so dark in here. He hates light, especially bright light. Okay, I think I can handle that. We have a nice dark basement and Billy's room. And don't get him wet. Keep him away from the water. No light, no water. I guess a day at the beach is out of the question. The kid looked at Rand pointedly. I'm serious, mister, he said. Sure, Rand replied. It's just that animals need water to drink, right? This one doesn't. You sure? The youngster nodded emphatically. I'm telling you, he said. Light may kill him, and water may kill you. What? That's what grandfather says. Don't ask me how he knows, but those are the two important rules. If you don't think you can do that, say so. It's only because we need the money so bad that I'm even thinking about selling the Mogwai. Sure, I understand, Rand nodded, reaching for his wallet again. I almost forgot the most important thing, the boy continued. The thing you can never forget is, no matter how much he cries, no matter how much he begs, never, ever feed him after midnight. You got it? Rand swallowed, forcing back a sudden impulse to laugh at such quaint sets of rules. Maybe the old man was senile, and the kid was just plain crazy, but his heart was set on bringing that little animal home to Billy. If that meant playing the game with the kid, he'd do it. I got it, he said seriously. No light, no water, no food after midnight. He started to hand the money to the boy, then thought better of it. Where'll I meet you? He asked. Out back. 5 minutes. Rand nodded. Whistling softly, he stole another look at Gizmo, and then walked briskly out of the curio shop.